Shuckett. At this time, we will begin the question and answer portion of the briefing. When asking a question, please state your name and affiliation. Operator will take the first question.
Thank you. And once again, that is *1 if you would like to ask a question. Our first question comes from Kieran Stacy. You may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Thanks very much. This is Kieran Stacy from the Financial Times. This obviously looks like the same thing that's happening with the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the contacts that you've had with regulators in Europe about that, and also whether there's any evidence of similar events happening with Moderna and Pfizer at all.
Certainly. This is Janet Woodcock. We are in constant contact with the regulators worldwide and looking at adverse events experienced in different regions. I'll turn this over to Dr. Marks to answer in detail.
Thanks very much. So you asked about whether there were similar cases with the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines, and there have been over 180 million doses of these vaccines administered, and at this time, we've not found any reports of cerebral vein sinus thrombosis combined with thrombocytopenia.
Operator will take the next question.
Thank you. That comes from Michael Ehrman. You may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, this is Mike Ehrman from Reuters. I'm wondering, just quickly, how long the pause is expected to be? What's the minimum time? And also whether you're considering limiting vaccination for J&J to certain groups like people over 50 or all men and women over 50?
Well, the time frame will depend, obviously, on what we learn in the next few days. However, we expect it to be a matter of days for this pause. And I will maybe turn it over to Dr. Shuckett to answer further.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Woodcock. We are committed to an expeditious review of the available information and to an aggressive outreach to clinicians so that they know how to diagnose, treat, and report. One of the things that the ACIP deliberation will do is review the data on the cases and the context of risks, benefits, and possible subsets of the population that may be in a different category. So I think our intent is in the days ahead to provide an update regularly, and that the pause provides us time for deliberation and assuring appropriate diagnosis and treatment.
Operator will take the next question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Elizabeth Weiss. You may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, USA Today. I had a question, and maybe this is for Dr. Marks. Do you have any sense of what the mechanism behind this might be? What could potentially be causing this?
Yeah, well, we have hypotheses. This is Janet Woodcock. Dr. Marks, maybe you want to enlarge upon that.
Yeah, so thanks very much. We don't have a definitive cause, but the probable cause that we believe may be involved here that we can speculate is a similar mechanism that may be going on with the other adenoviral vectored vaccine. That is that this is an immune response that occurs very, very rarely after some people receive the vaccine, and that immune response leads to activation of the platelets and these extremely rare blood clots.
Yes, so to be specific, this is Janet Woodcock. The person being vaccinated makes an immune response potentially that actually involves their own platelets or other parts of the coagulation system and can cause this problem. And that's the sort of leading theory or hypothesis about what's going on here.
Operator will take the next question.
Thank you. And that comes from Matt Perrine. You may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, thanks, with the Associated Press. Thanks for taking questions. Can you talk a little bit more about just how the FDA determined that these 6 events out of almost 7 million injections constitute a signal? I mean, what would have been the background rate for a type of event like this, if there is if there is another explanation possible.
Certainly, this is Janet Woodcock. This was a extensive work between the CDC and the FDA on this set of events and analysis to see, exactly what you're asking about. So, Dr. Marks, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thanks very much. So the issue of cerebral venous sinus thrombosis, the background rate of that is probably somewhere between 2 and 14 per million people. But that's in the setting of a normal platelet count. The combination here, the real thing that is so notable here is not just the cerebral venous sinus thrombosis or the thrombocytopenia. Those two things can occur. It's their occurrence together that makes a pattern, and that pattern is very, very similar to what was seen in Europe with another vaccine. So I think we have to take the time to make sure we understand this complication and we address it properly.
Thank you.
Operator, we'll take the next question.
Ann Flaherty, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, it's Suzanne Flaherty with ABC News. So what would you say to people who are concerned and frustrated that they think this might be an overreaction, considering it's 6 people out of 7 million?
I would ask Dr. Suja to
Sure.
respond to that. Thanks.
Sure. We are committed to safety and transparency and to expeditiously learning as much as we can so that further steps can be taken. When we saw this pattern and were aware that treatment needed to be individualized for this condition, it was of the utmost important for us to get the word out. That said, the pandemic is quite severe and cases are increasing in a lot of places, and vaccination is critical. So we want to make sure that we make some recommendations quickly.
Thank you. Operator, we'll take the next question.
Thank you. Jacqueline Howard, you may go ahead. Please state your outlet.
Thanks for taking my question. I'm with CNN, and I would like to know more about the decision-making process for the pause. It seems like just yesterday we were told that this was something that was being looked into, and then this morning the decision was made. We also understand that some states may be upset that they were not given a heads up. So can someone explain how did this decision happen quickly, and why was the decision made, and were states involved or given awareness or heads up that the pause would happen? Thank you.
Sure,
Dr. Marks, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I can just start and then let Dr. Marks expand. I wish that we had more time to get everyone prepared and that this could go even more smoothly. As we learned about the issue with appropriate treatment, and it was clear to us that we needed to alert the public. We included the pause in addition to the alert so that there was time for the healthcare community to learn what they needed to learn about how to diagnose, treat, and report. But the decision was based on the events that might occur between when we made that realization and when we got the word out. So it was a question of wanting to make sure we could be open with our concerns and prepare the healthcare community to diagnose, treat, and report while the more detailed deliberation occurs tomorrow. I don't know if you have anything to add, Dr. Marks.
No, I would just echo that the issue here with these types of blood clots is that if one administers the standard treatments that we as doctors have learned to give for blood clots, one can actually cause tremendous harm, or the outcome can be fatal. So one needs to make sure that providers are aware that if they see people who have low blood platelets, or if they see people who have blood clots, they need to inquire about a history of recent vaccination and then act accordingly in the diagnosis and management of those individuals. This was taken rapidly in order to honor our commitment to the American public to ensure that any safety signal that came up during this vaccine rollout was fully addressed in a transparent manner.
Operator, we'll take the next question.
Thank you. Caroline Chen, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, I'm Caroline Chen at ProPublica. I was wondering if the FDA has any sense of any subpopulations or medical histories that may predispose a person to this rare side effect, or even if you have a hypothesis on that at this point.
This is Janet Woodcock. I believe there are too few cases for us to make that determination for this particular vaccine. We may be hearing about more cases. We will look further into these. We'll have deliberations, as was just described, tomorrow about the details, but we aren't prepared at this time to single out any particular subgroup.
Operator, we'll take the next question.
Thank you. Jackie Lee, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much for having this call. I'm with Bloomberg Law. I was hoping that someone could address kind of anything that you would suggest going forward regarding messaging for this. I would anticipate that, there could be some fears about this stoking some more vaccine hesitancy. And so, what would you recommend to help providers to avoid that situation?
Well, this is Janet Woodcock again. Number one, we've had several questions related to this. I think we need to reiterate, we are committed to vaccination. We feel that is a really important tool to get this pandemic under control. We're also committed to patient safety. And our message is that in doing this, we feel we're taking the route that will provide the most safety for the patient by enabling healthcare professionals to recognize, to properly treat, and properly report any of the events that might happen. But the message to the patients, I think, would be, to those who haven't been vaccinated, would continue to be to get vaccines that are available to them, because the risks from the pandemic are significant, and that the government is really looking into very carefully any safety problems so that they could be managed properly with this particular vaccine and all vaccines.
Maybe I could expand. This is Dr. Schuchat, just to say, agree with Dr. Woodcock's assessment, and just to remind clinicians and the public that 121 million people have been vaccinated with at least one dose of one of the three vaccines, and the vast majority of the doses were of the other two products, the Pfizer and Moderna products. With our intensive safety monitoring, we have not detected this type of syndrome with the low platelets among the other vaccines. And we have real world evidence now of the vaccine's effectiveness in the US. So we're taking this pause and precautions around the J&J product in the context of a large, robust, and highly safe and effective vaccination effort.
Thank you. Operator, we'll take the next question.
Thank you. Eben Braun, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, good morning. This is Eben Brown from Fox News. I'm curious about the choice of words in your announcements. You are recommending a pause in the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but you are not ordering a stoppage. Is there a difference between the two? What would that difference be? And what would happen or what should happen or what are your words to a state or a county or a nonprofit outfit that does not heed your recommendation? Thank you.
Dr. Marks, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question. This is a recommendation and it's not a mandate. It's out of an abundance of caution, we're recommending that the vaccine be paused in terms of its administration. However, if an individual healthcare provider has a conversation with an individual patient and they determine that the benefit risk for that individual patient is appropriate, we're not going to stop that provider from administering the vaccine, because it could be, right, in many cases, that benefit risk will be beneficial overall to that individual in the large majority of cases. So again, we're recommending a pause out of an abundance of caution, but on an individual basis, a provider and patient can make a determination whether or not to receive the vaccine.
Operator will take the next question.
Thank you. Sarah Overman, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, thank you. This is Sarah Overmall from Politico. Going back to Caroline's question on subgroups, I know that there's a few cases now, but is there any sort of risk from linked to birth control because all of the women are of childbearing age? And then also, obviously, there are 6 confirmed cases now, but probably more are going to come out as people recognize this. So is there a number, how many probable cases do you guys have on your horizon right now?
Dr. Marks?
I'm happy to take this one. Yeah. Thanks very much. At this time, it's not clear that there's any association with the oral contraceptive pill birth control in the individuals who had these blood clots. Additionally, I think it's too early to make any speculation on how many cases will come out. I do agree with you that it's possible we will learn of more cases, and that's part of the reason why we're taking the pause to try to ascertain that. But I cannot speculate on how many more we'll learn of. Hopefully, it's just going to be a few.
Thank you.
Operator will take the next question.
Thank you. Leanne Winnick, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
I am from CBS News, and I actually have 2 questions. As you mentioned that some people may have a conversation with their healthcare provider and decide that this is appropriate for them, but most people are going to mass vaccination sites and don't have that relationship. Are there certain risk factors that an individual would know from their medical history? And secondly, could you estimate the number of J&J that were meant to be given out in the days ahead and how that might affect the president's 200 million dose goal since his inauguration? Thanks.
Either anyone would like to respond to this question?
Let me start with the second question first. I think the vaccine supply has become more abundant over time, and I think that this temporary pause is hopefully not going to have a large adverse effect on making those goals in a timely manner, if any at all. In terms of risk factors, I think those are, at this point, they are specific enough that to an individual that's going to have to be a determination that an individual has with their healthcare provider. And I'll turn that over to Dr. Schuchat, since this is she may have more to say about that.
Yes, and thank you, Dr. Marks. We're working right now from a small number from the 6 events that have been reported here in the U.S. And so while we're seeing them in women under 50, I think we are going to need to take some time and have our advisory committee take additional time to review. As my understanding is that there weren't predisposing conditions for these events in at least some of those individuals. And then the issue of supply, just to say that currently the J&J product had been providing the minority, the great minority of doses. Every dose is precious, and we're keen to get as many doses as possible administered as frequently, as rapidly as possible and as equitably as possible. But it's too early for us to know the impact on the supply longer term.
I couldn't hear what you said, Dr. Shuckett. You said there were or were not pre-existing conditions in these 6 cases.
What I tried to say is there were not in all of them. So not to say that there may have been in some, but I think, I think my main point is that review of 6 is difficult to make generalizations from. We're going to have our expert committee take a careful look, and we're, of course, trying to assure that providers will report suspect episodes so that they can be further investigated, because the numbers are quite small enough that it's hard to generalize, but large enough that we wanted to take the action with the pause.
Operator will take our next question.
Thank you. Helen Braswell, you may go ahead and please state your outlet.
Hi, yes, it's Helen Braswell from STAT. Thanks for taking my question. I think this is a question for Dr. Marks. Your remarks earlier suggest you think this is a class effect. Are you looking back through data of the various experimental adenovirus vector vaccines that have been produced over the years, the one GSK was making with NIAID, or the J&J Ebola vaccine for that matter, to see if there's data there that can help you with this problem?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. We're going to look at the totality of the evidence available to us that informs this. So yes.
But do you think it is a class effect?
Well, I hesitate to call it a class effect, but I think it's plainly obvious to us already that what we're seeing with the Janssen vaccines looks very similar to what was being seen with the AstraZeneca vaccine. One is the AstraZeneca is a chimpanzee adenoviral vectored vaccine. The Janssen is a human adenoviral vectored vaccine. So I think I can't make some broad statement yet, but obviously they are from the same general class of viral vectors.
J&J is doing a 2-dose trial. Have you asked them to pause that?
I think you can look at statements that will come out of J&J today about their voluntary actions in response to this request for a pause.
Thank you. Operator, we will take our last question.
Thank you. Dr. John LaPook, you may go ahead. Please state your outlet.
Hi, Dr. John LaPook, CBS News. I'm wondering if you could help put this in perspective a little bit more. The CVST you said was about 2 to 14 per million. I assume that's per year in patients with normal platelets. And these 6 people, in order to annualize them, that's over what, about the 6 weeks since authorization?
That's probably correct.
Right.
So do we know what the rate is in people with low platelets? Because it's the 2 to 14. It sounds like it's like 1 in a million if it's 6 per 6 or 7 million. That's very, very about what the background rate would be in people with normal platelets. But we're saying this is what makes this unusual is that they have the combination of the low platelets and the clotting. So do we know what the background rate is in people who have the CVST and low platelets?
This is Peter Marks. We don't. But what we do know is that this type of a combination of low platelets and blood clots has been very rarely seen in the past in other situations as an autoimmune phenomenon. But it's very, very rare, such that I don't have an annualized rate that I can provide you.
Because I can imagine as a clinician, I mean, headache, we're going to now see a lot of people with headache. The management specifics, I guess you didn't want to really go into, but I guess it's not anticoagulation standard. It's maybe some kind of thrombectomy or something. But I can imagine in the next couple of days, which is probably why you're rushing to get this assessed quickly, there's going to be a lot of phone calls to doctors like me.
So maybe I can pass it over to Dr. Schuckert in a moment, but I think some of the key information here is that these have usually occurred at least about a week after vaccination and not longer than 3 weeks after vaccination, with a median of about 9 days after vaccination. We know that for these vaccines, for the first several days after vaccination, there are flu-like symptoms, which can include headache. So I think for the internists out there and the primary care providers who are caring for patients, if they're seeing flu-like symptoms and headache for the first few days after vaccination, that is likely just what has been seen in the common adverse events that are not serious with these vaccines. It would be more important that if somebody presented to an emergency room with a very severe headache or with blood clots, that a history of prior vaccination be elicited and then appropriate management be instituted. So I think this is the message that we need to get out to healthcare providers, that if someone ends up with a very severe headache or any type of shortness of breath, pain in their legs, pain in their abdomen that's severe, that they would want to seek medical attention. And if there are low platelets at that time, one needs to consider this entity.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, this concludes today's media briefing. A replay will be available on the FDA's YouTube page. And just to note, the FDA and CDC's press releases have been posted on our agency's website. So thank you very much for joining today, and goodbye.
And thank you. This concludes today's conference call. You may go ahead and disconnect at this time.